Thank you so much for joining today. I am so grateful for each and every one of you that jump on every single week and that follow every single message that I share. I'm so grateful for a community of people that are purposefully intending to be positive and to spread love and to spread goodness and to give the gifts that God has blessed you with. I'm grateful to be a part of a community of people who can see through everything that is happening around them, and you are able to see what's really happening behind the scenes. It takes a very particular type of discernment in order to witness a situation or a circumstance and to see through the lens of truth rather than to see through what's happening and to become impacted by what's happening. I know that sometimes it is hard. It is hard to stand in the face of a circumstance that seems larger than life. That sometimes in those spaces, we can deal with anxiety, we can deal with fear, we can deal with thoughts of not being enough, we can deal with self esteem issues. When we are head on in a battle, and we are not recognizing that this battle has a significance and a meaning that is larger than what we are seeing with our natural eyes. There are so many times that I in my personal life have allowed a situation or circumstance to overwhelm me from the position of anxiety and fear and questioning and doubting myself because I was not recognizing that the power that I was operating in through that circumstance or through that situation was not my own. And I am reminded ever so gently of the scripture that tells me that in my weakness, he becomes my strength. Maybe you're weak today. Maybe you are weak because you have been searching for an answer. And in some cases, maybe you have been searching for God to turn something around. Maybe you're in a position today where you're asking yourself the question, why am I having to go through this? Maybe you're in a position today where you are asking yourself the question, but why am I facing this? Why am I having to fight with this? There are times in our life that God compels us to join in partnership with him, that through his partnership with us, that he may make his plans come to pass. And sometimes we are sent into circumstances and situations, whether it is relationships, whether it is our places of employment, whether it is our families, our communities. Sometimes we are placed in circumstances and situations that God has planted us there. And when we are in those places and in those circumstances where God has placed us there, many times the attacks and the fights and the things that are hurled towards us are as of a result of nothing to do with you, but everything to do with the assignment and the purpose that is on your life. You see, when someone or something begins to attack you or begins to put up all types of accusations or falsehoods or all types of things that could frustrate you and that could make you doubt yourself, you have to recognize that these things do not come by way of anything that is necessarily wrong with you, as much as sometimes it's just the enemy trying to get you off course. It's the enemy trying to get you overwhelmed with a place of anxiety, with a place of fear. And if we are not careful when things happen, we will operate from the space of believing that we are not equipped. We will operate from a space of believing that we don't have what it takes to maneuver through this circumstance to see victory on the other side. You are not alone. You are not alone in being in a position of feeling like things are greater than what you can face or what you can deal with. You are not alone in experiencing sadness and maybe even anxiety. You are not alone in having thoughts of self doubt. You are not alone in having thoughts of defeat or feeling as though you're not going to win. There are many of us that are on this course and on these paths that God has placed us that we grapple with those feelings. It may not be in the same exact area because you may be dealing with something in another arena than what I am dealing with, but these are thoughts and feelings that are common to us. But I have come to understand and recognize that when these feelings exist and when these feelings happen because I am human, it is because I am trying to conceive how to maneuver through my circumstance with my own power. I am trying to conceive what I have and what I can do to turn things around. It's when I am taking back the authority or the position of God in a situation. Let me put it in layman's terms. It's when I'm playing God. It is the moments that I'm finding myself playing God in a circumstance or a situation that is the place where anxiety begins to exist in my life. That is the place where thoughts of doubt and fear and self-esteem issues begin to arise because I am trying to figure out what I can do next rather than resting in God, knowing that His plan for me, where He has planted me, will always triumph over whatever attacks, whatever things happen. There is a story that I want to use as an analogy today. There is a story in the scriptures that I think points out this perfect example of how partnership with God, how it can allow you to see circumstances that are happening, but still have hope outside of that. There's this story in the book of Ruth. Ruth, and I'll just give you a brief history so that we can be on the same page. Ruth was a woman that came into a place of marrying a man. And when she married this man, she also became a part of his family. Now, she had a mother in law named Naomi. And Naomi had just lost her husband. Not only had Naomi just lost her husband, but as we read a few years, 10 years go down the road, and Naomi then loses her two sons, her only two sons at her own old age. It just so happened that one of her two sons was Ruth's husband, which means that Naomi lost her husband, which is the ability to be taken care of. But then she lost her two sons, which is her future ability of being able to be taken care of. Ruth lost her husband, which at that young age, she had a decision that she had to make. And this is where many of us get lost. Many of us get lost when we are in the position of having a circumstance that happens that we could be overwhelmed and hurt by, and we can go to respond from a place of our emotion. We can go to respond from a place of our own ability, considering ourselves and beginning to calculate the costs and thinking that if I go this direction, then this will certainly yield me the results that I need. The scripture says that there is a way that seemeth right unto man, but it leads to destruction. I cannot think of how many times where I am faced with a circumstance, and whenever I am faced with a circumstance, there are always two options. One of those two options is to respond with thinking what I can do within my own power. And then the other response is, I'm just going to trust God in this space. And it can be difficult to understand and to decipher the two. But Ruth gives us a clear indication in the scripture of following and partnering with God and what happens as a result of us doing things God's way. Sometimes when we're doing things God's way, it looks like the enemy is winning over us. Sometimes when we are doing things God's way, it looks as though we are foolish. Sometimes when we're doing God's things God's way, people who are not privy to the knowledge and the intel that you are will look at you and judge your decisions and judge your choices. They will say things like, "You stupid for doing that. There's no way I would do that." But it's going to take you to step outside of the comfort of what seems natural and what seems normal, to lean in to partnership with God. That may mean that your friends may talk about you. That may mean that your family may talk about you. That may mean that people will become uncomfortable with you. That may mean that people will begin to hurl insults at you. That may mean that people will dislike you and you won't be able to figure out why they're disliking you. But all of those things happen as a stance of alignment, aligning you with the true purpose for why God has planted you where he planted you. We see in the scripture where Naomi told Ruth, "Hey, your son is dead. Your husband is dead. My son is dead. My husband is dead as well. So I have no way to possibly produce a husband for you that can take care of you. So I want you to go back home to your family." We see this scripture where her other daughter-in-law made a choice that she was going to take that road and she was going to go back home to her family. But Ruth made the decision and understood that she was in partnership with God. Ruth made the decision that was contrary to what the cultural norms would have been. Ruth made a decision to follow the plan that God had for her life. In the face of loss, in the face of hurt, in the face of fear, of thinking and believing there's not a possibility of me even producing or having a son. There's not a possibility of me having anything to be taken care of me because I'm going to stay with this old woman that has lost everything as well. This was a hard decision that Ruth had to make, but she felt it impressed upon herself to do what God was leading her to do. Now, as we read further in the scripture, there's one particular scripture I'm going to read for us in Ruth chapter 4. This is at the end, after she stayed where God told her to stay, after she faced having to get scraps and leftovers, after she faced having to just mutter by, because there are moments when you are doing what God has called you to do, that it seems like you're only getting bits and pieces of things to help you. There are moments where you will question your own decisions. There are moments where you will question your own choices. There are moments where you will doubt and question whether God is seeing you. You would naturally think that once Ruth made the decision to do what God wanted her to do, then all of the doors would immediately begin to start opening for her, that people would automatically just be good to her. But Ruth had to go through this moment of just receiving just enough. And because she was faithful in this process, the enough that she began to receive, it began to increase. God began to enlarge her territory as she continued to do what she was called and planted to do. Friends, once you begin to partner with God in the face of anxiety, in the face of fear, in the face of knowing and understanding that you are fully equipped to go the direction and the path that God has called you to walk, despite what you may feel like, despite what you may desire, just following God's path for something opens up doors. It opens up doors that otherwise would not have been opened to you. Now, I don't know what happened to Naomi's other daughter-in-law that made the decision to go back home. We don't hear anything about her. So I don't know what happened to her in the end. I don't know if she went and she silently just slipped off into life, and maybe she got married again. Maybe she had children. Maybe nothing happened and she just remained a widow for the remainder of her life. I don't know her story. But the story that we do know is about Ruth. We know Ruth's story because God made her story go global. God made her story transcend generations. God made her story large. Maybe God is making your story large. Maybe you're having to take a path that others would not take. Maybe you're having to stand in something that others would have walked away from. Maybe you're having to stand up for something that others would just be silent in. Maybe you are just taking what life is throwing at you and you are not making any type of moves to the normal and natural eye. But God is about to make your story large. What we see from Ruth's willingness to partner with God and to lean in to what God was calling her to do, we see that not only did God bless Ruth in the end of her life, but God also used Ruth to bless Naomi, the one that had absolutely no possibility of receiving any form of reward. We look in Ruth chapter 4, verse number 15, and it says these words: He will renew your life, speaking of Naomi, and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Naomi was given another son through Ruth. God used Ruth to provide unto Naomi in her old age. Friends, I don't know what God is setting you up for. I don't know why God is calling you into partnership with Him to maybe face some things that you have been afraid to face, to maybe deal with some things that you have been afraid to deal with. Sometimes it is overwhelming when we are trying to act within our own power. And it could seem so much easier to just simply do what everybody else is doing. It would have seemed so much easier for Ruth to go the direction that Oprah did and to leave and to return home to her family. It would seem so much easier not to believe for anything else and just silently slip off into the abyss. It would have seemed so much easier for her to just sit down and do what everybody else is doing. But God was calling Ruth into partnership because there was something in this earth that only Ruth was anointed to do. Friends, you have been called and planted where you have been planted because there is something inside of you through the vicissitudes of life and all that you are enduring that has been placed in this earth at this time for this season. And what I do know about God is that there is no way that you can partner with Him and not be abundantly blessed in the end. Not only will you be blessed, but there is something about partnership with God that when you are blessed, you begin to bless everybody else that's around you and that's connected to you. You are being called to greatness. You are being called to an enlarged territory. You are being called to a higher dimension and a higher level. And sometimes it is difficult. Sometimes you may have to go alone. Sometimes you may have to fight with the feelings of anxiety, doubt, and disbelief. But just remember that when you do, it is because you are trying to consider your power to get through this, not understanding that it is not in your own power. It is not in your own might, but it is through God, Christ through you, hope of glory. Friends, you are fully equipped to partner with God And whatever you are meant to release and to bring forth in this earth, you will. And it doesn't matter what weapon forms against you, whether it is people, whether it is places, or whether it is things. You will always come out victorious. You will always come out a winner because you have partnered with one that never loses. I pray that this message has blessed you and your family. I want you to do me a favor today and share this message with someone because someone must hear this today. The anxiety is over. The fear is over. The doubt is over. Even as I'm speaking to you now, I believe that by me saying these words, I am breaking the chains of darkness. I am breaking the chains of anxiety. I am breaking the chains of fear. I am breaking the chains of doubt off of your life because you are leaning into God. And there is no way that you can lean into partnership with God and not come out victorious. Thank you so much for watching today. Again, share this message with someone because someone needs to hear it. I pray that you are blessed and that this is an amazing week. Partner with God this week and watch what happens. Maybe you'll choose to sow or to connect or to partner. There is a link in the bio. I would admonish you to click that link today. Every one of you. If you are not subscribed on YouTube, I am challenging you today to go over to YouTube. I am trying to move everything over to that platform. So please partner and sign up and subscribe on YouTube today. That would be a major blessing. Maybe you need prayer. Just simply say, I need prayer. And our prayer team prays every single Thursday at 6 o'clock a.m. And we would be so happy and honored to pray for you and your family. God bless you today. Have a wonderful